Okay, so welcome everyone to today's special fireside chat that Guard is hosting. My name is Tal Eisner, and I'm the Vice President of Product Marketing at Guards. We are thrilled, and I am personally thrilled to have you join us for what promises to be a fascinating and insightful session. This webinar is part of our ongoing series of webinars dedicated to the MSP community. Our goal with these webinars is really to provide valuable content, share expert knowledge, foster the community of learning and growth among MSPs, which is where Guards really live and work at. Whether you're an established MSP or just starting out, we believe there is always something new to learn in this ever-evolving field of cybersecurity, specifically for this area. And really today we have a truly remarkable guest with us, Chris Michaels. Chris has a unique and inspiring journey, personal story that we're excited to share with you guys. He served as a soldier on the battlefield and has now transformed into a cyber defender, protecting clients as part of elevated networks. Of course, we will speak about that. His story is a testament to resilience, adaptability, and the importance of cybersecurity in today's digital world. We're going to speak on all these subjects. Chris will share a little bit from what he will choose, his personal journey from military service to cybersecurity, and discuss the challenges that he faced. And he also hopefully will explain how his military background has equipped him with the unique skills for his current role. We'll also delve a little bit in how Elevated Networks utilizes Guards as their cybersecurity platform and partner, and how this partnership helps in safeguarding their clients. So before we dive into the conversation, I want to remind everyone that this is a session which is an interactive. You are more than welcome to send questions in the chat, which I'm sure all of you know how to do so. We are recording this session, and it will be, of course, be sent afterwards to everyone that attends, and we will post it on social media again. So we encourage you to submit questions throughout the webinar, throughout the session, and we'll address them during the Q&A portion of towards the end. So without further ado, first let's welcome Chris Michaels. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hey, Tal. How you doing? I'm good.
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Glad to be here. Glad to see you again.
Yeah, me too. So, Chris, we've met previously. It's not the first time we're speaking, and I heard your story when we met back in Orlando a few months ago, and it's quite a unique story. So I think in order to begin, maybe we'll start, like they say here, start in the beginning. So you started out, I think, 13 or 15 years ago. You will correct me with the appropriate and the exact numbers in the
Yeah.
army. Maybe you can tell
Yeah.
us, how did you get to enlist to the army, and what were your aspirations back then?
So at this point, it was about 15 years ago is when I first started looking at joining the army. Um, I honestly, I wanted to just kill bad guys, right? I saw Black Hawk Down as a little kid, and I
It
thought it was
always
the
comes
coolest thing in
that
the world.
it always comes down to that, right? You see like a
Always,
movie, and then yeah.
always. I didn't know about the benefits you got from the military or any of that. I just knew I wanted to go, off and fight for the country, right? So I went, saw the recruiter, and it took me a little while to join because I wasn't the best kid. I ended up having to go through some steps to become eligible to join the army. And that took me about a year and a half to actually do, which is a lot longer than normal. But I wanted to do it. I really wanted to do it. I wanted to serve my country and protect people. That ultimately that's what it was. I wanted to protect people.
And this was what
So
year?
this was 2009.
All right.
2009 is when I first started talking to recruiters, and then 2000 end of 2010 early 2011 was when I went off to basic training. I joined the army, went to basic training to be an artilleryman. So wasn't infantry like I wanted, but artillery was very fun. I learned a lot, got to do a lot of fun things. I did that for about 5 years, and then I got in a bad car accident and I broke my arm. I repaired it, was better, but it was still troublesome in order to like lift the rounds. The rounds are about 100 pounds, so it was painful to do that. So I went to my career counselor and said, "Hey, I want to stay in the army, but I can't do this job anymore. I need to do something different." And I always loved computers, always loved tech, but I never really thought about doing like an IT job. So I became a Apache mechanic in the army. I changed my job. There's a whole process to do that. Went to the new job school. That was in 2015.
Tell me what do we see on the screen here now?
So in this picture, this is when I was deployed. That's my gun section. So I'm in the top left. This is younger me, probably about
Almost
30.
hard to recognize you.
I know, right? There's no beard. The hair is a
No
bit
beard.
shorter. I'm about 30 pounds lighter in that picture. Uh, but yeah, great guys right there. The guy in the middle was one of my mentors. That was Sergeant Watkins. He's a great inspiration when I was coming up in the army. Kind of pointed me in the right direction for a lot of things.
And this was,
Uh,
if you can share, I don't know,
this was in Kuwait. Yeah.
Kuwait. All
So
right.
so when we were there, we were doing a like a show force slash training mission. We were training the Kuwaitis on how to protect themselves, and we were also doing a show of force in against Iraq as well, because that was back in 2012. So we hadn't actually officially pulled out of Iraq yet either. So we were there still as like a QRF element, quick reaction force, in case people over there needed help. As artillery, oftentimes we could shoot across country borders if needed. So I think the maximum range for those was about 18 kilometers. So it's pretty far distance.
All right.
Uh,
And where did you go? How did this continue? How did this develop? Where did you go? You said you switched a few roles.
yeah, so 2015, I switched roles to be a Apache helicopter mechanic, and I had no idea what I was getting into, honestly. My uncle and my cousin, they were in the Marine Corps, and they were both helicopter mechanics. They loved it. They always told me these cool stories about how they used to fly in the helicopters, go to like Vegas, Las Vegas, or go wherever and kind of party, hang out. That was like 25 years ago, 30 years ago. A lot's changed. So in the Apache, you can't really ride in there. Uh, we were just kind of maintenance guys. We just fixed it all the time. The kids loved it. They always go to the hangar. I bring them to the hangar and they get to see the helicopters. That's myself and my youngest son. That was in Washington State. So we had a family day and we got to
That's an
bring him.
Apache, right?
That's an Apache helicopter. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Very, very cool machine. Breaks a lot, very temperamental, a lot like a lot of customers' equipment. Breaks for no reasons, doesn't work right for no reason, right? But very, very fun when it's working. Very fun to watch it fly, watch it operate, and it was fun to work on because the way it works is very interesting. I don't think the engineers really had it in mind or had us in mind when they were working on it and building it, but it was fun. That's myself and again Sergeant Watkins in the back of a Black Hawk. We were flying. That was during a training mission, so we were just flying to like a fake village, and we were gonna at that time we were training up to be a certified infantry company in case we had to go out and do infantry operations. So one of our final like tasks that we were graded on in order to get that certification was we had to go into a village, clear the village, and this is like over 10 years ago, so I forget the exacts of it, but we had to do some things in the village, and it was a lot of fun. That was the first time I flew in a Black Hawk, so it was a little nerve wracking, but it was still fun, a lot of fun.
Okay. And how does this career develops? I mean, where does it go from there?
So fast forward, I was a Apache mechanic for about 5 years, and then I became a Army recruiter. So in the Army, Department of the Army, the top level, they'll look at the non-commissioned officers like the sergeants, staff sergeants, and they'll say, "Hey, you need a broadening assignment. You need to do something out of your element to." They say it boosts your career up and it helps you develop. Not all of us agree the same way, but I'd be they maybe be a recruiter. So you could be a recruiter or a drill sergeant. Because of my back issues, and we'll get to that in a little bit, I couldn't be a drill sergeant. So I became a recruiter. I was lucky enough to be a recruiter in my hometown where I enlisted out of actually. So I was close to all my family. I knew the area, and being a recruiter gave me a lot of time to get my medical issues looked at. I wasn't a fan of the assignment. It was again not something I was very keen on doing, but having the time of not being in the field, not training, not deploying, all that stuff gave me time to get my medical issues looked at. And that's where I found out I had ankylosing spondylitis, which is it's an autoimmune disease that it attacks all your joints. And it, in short, I often describe it as rheumatoid arthritis on steroids, right? Because not only does it attack your joints and it causes severe inflammation across like every joint in your body, but it has other issues that come with autoimmune things, right? So like I could eat the wrong thing and go into a pretty bad flare up where all my joints get inflamed and I can't move around very well. So I got diagnosed with that as a recruiter, and obviously you can't have that in the military. Uh, it's a big no no, right? Because you can't deploy, you can't fight, you can't train.
And when
So
is that? When is that?
that was in 2021. 2021 is when I got diagnosed, and immediately the military started what's called the medical board, and that's where bunch of doctors in the army, they'll review pretty much the condition. So they reviewed ankylosing spondylitis, and they determined whether or not you could stay in the military or not with that, based on how severe it is, what the recommending doctor says, all these things, and they said no, which was bittersweet. I didn't want that to happen. I loved the army. I loved being in the military and the camaraderie, the team building, and everything that you get from that. So it was very bittersweet. But at the
Yeah,
same time,
that's exactly what the point I wanted to touch. I mean, physical effects aside and all the reasons for it, but at the end or in the beginning, you've been in the army for 13 years, I believe,
yeah,
something like this. So this
yeah,
was your
13
life,
years.
basically. This was your life, your
That's all I
living,
knew.
all you knew. And then
Yeah,
one day, of course, it was a gradual process, but one day you understand and acknowledge the fact that this is going to end, right?
yeah, yeah. And
And
thankfully, it took about 6 months for the entire medical board process to complete. And I was fortunate enough to have a high enough disability percentage to where the Army retired me. So I'm officially retired out of the Army as a retired staff sergeant. So that was very grateful for that. When you retire from the military, you get a lot of good benefits, like health benefits, stuff like that. So I was very fortunate for that because that was the end goal. I wanted to do 20 years, retire, get the good benefits you get, and then move on, do something else. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
oh, so
Uh,
that's the other point I wanted to say. Once you acknowledge and understood deeply that this is going to end because of the reasons that you've described, and that a change will have to be made. Did you have any idea where you want to go or what do you want to do with the rest of your life?
I had no idea. I honestly had no idea. I thought, whenever people work on getting out of the military, they always say, "I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to school," and it's a good option because if you are in the military, you get the GI Bill, and what that is it kind of it pays for like 3 years of schooling, and it
Yeah,
also gives you a housing stipend, so you
right.
get to pay money for rent, stuff like that. So it's a good option to fall back on. But I wanted to get a degree in something. I wanted to because even when I was in the army, I was taking general ed classes so that when I retired, I could go have a foot in the door for whatever degree I wanted. I still didn't know. Thought about being a lawyer for a while because I liked understanding laws and technical things like that, but I never actually wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to go to law school and not actually be a lawyer. It sounded like a waste of time. So a good friend of mine, he works as a system administrator for a college, and he told me you should look into IT. I think you would do really well in IT. I said, I'll look at it. I'll look into it and see if I like it. I started getting really big into programming, and I like programming. It's fun to make computers work the way you want them to, or not work the way you want them to, and figure it out and troubleshoot it and use critical thinking. So I started going to school for software development with a minor in like artificial intelligence and machine learning. That was fun, but I took a class on security and how to secure. This was it was like secure programming. I think it touched a little bit on about security. I said, "Wow, this is great! Like, this is awesome!" Because from the moment I exited the army, like the day that I was no longer on active duty, I was missing something. I just did 13 years of my life always having that feeling of protecting people, protecting things, and then one day I just did. I was I had no purpose.
And
So
the parallel between being, as you said, wanted to kill the bad guys when you were a kid and watching movies, Black Hawk Down and others, and going to dedicate your life to that, and then finding interest in security. Did you saw any connection between this resemblance?
yeah, right away actually, I immediately put two and two together because for about it was about a year at that point, maybe 6 months, closer to a year at that point that I was just I kind of felt empty. I didn't really know what I was going to do because even with programming, I thought, okay, well, this is fun, but what's the point? What's the point of someone's going to say, hey, we need an application made for this, and I'll make it, right? That's lame. That's boring. I wanted to have that feeling of protecting people and protecting things again. So I started doing my own research and my own training on security and what it actually entailed, and it was really scary actually, and it still is scary. Like even today, where I'm at now,
Why? Why?
the threat is always going to be there. The bad actors are always going to be there, and I like personally, I feel they're always going to be a step ahead of us.
Hang on, before you go there, this is a very important subject that I want to touch, but I want to understand first of all how you started, how the transition happened, that you understood that it's not just going to be IT, it's going to be cybersecurity.
Yeah, so I was looking more into it, and I saw that connection is there. Regardless of what, and I had no idea what realms of cybersecurity there were at this point
Right,
either.
right.
I just knew that there was a cybersecurity degree, and there was all kinds of training online about it, and it all looked fun. It all looked like it had a purpose behind it. So I immediately changed my degree program. I called the school. I said, "Hey, I want to change into the cybersecurity program." That they did that. It was fine. I still had the same length on my degree. It was whatever. Changed my classes, and I continued doing things online, watching YouTube videos, doing hack the box, try hack me, all these different resources that I could get my hands on to educate myself because I'm at the time I was 30, 31 with the only IT experience I had was playing video games or building my own computers, browsing the web, things like that. I didn't really have any actual IT experience. So
Right,
I tried to play catch up over the
right.
last 10 plus years. But I always had that feeling like, hey, this is serving a purpose. This is doing something for someone that can't or doesn't know how to do it for themselves. And that's actually why I love being in the MSP industry versus working at a big corporation like Microsoft or Google in security because
Because
yeah, the bigger picture is there, like that's a larger scale. But working here in an MSP, we're helping the small businesses who still have a very important job, but they don't know how to do it, they can't afford to do it, and they need it. Everyone needs it. regardless of how big or small you are. Microsoft can afford to hire the best security engineers. The dental office down the road, they might not be able to afford it, but they need it because they have the same risk as anyone else does.
That's a
And yeah, I love that
very
about it.
that's very interesting. So you found the angle in which you're helping someone or some companies or some businesses, it doesn't really matter, but you found a purpose to
Yeah,
work in an MSP that will enable those small businesses or smaller companies to get the security that they need and can't have it because of many reasons. And
right.
we can have a sentence about that. That we know today that small and medium businesses are the largest in percentage amount of businesses in, for example, in North America, and many of them, actually all of them, are targets to cyber attacks. These cyber attacks or others, numerous types, and we will discuss this when we will discuss some of the challenges that you see today. But even though they are a big target, they still don't have the expertise, the human power, the resources to protect themselves. And this is where companies like Elevated Networks, an MSP, comes into the such a very acute and essential role in this, well, let's call it in this combat. If again
Yeah,
we want a
I
long,
mean it is.
yes,
It
yes,
is. Yeah,
it is a combat against the, let's call it the bad guys, the threat actors, whatever you want to call it. By the way, every name is really true. They are threat actors and they are the bad guys. Again, I don't want to get in too much to terminology, but we're talking about the same things. And the threat is large. We've seen around the world in the past decade, and more specifically in the past 5 years, it was very much highlighted during COVID when the
yeah,
entire world has turned digital because of what happened. And then I think for the first time, the world really acknowledged that the threat is so large and so disruptive. And it's not just people, sometimes people that do not understand the entire domain of cybersecurity and the I would say the volume of threats and attacks really sometimes think that it's like science fiction. It's computers, attackers, hackers, somebody with a hoodie sits in a dark room. It's like a movie, right? But the
yeah.
truth is, it's not. It's
Nope.
really a disruptive force that targets companies and people all around the world on a daily basis. This is not something that happens once in a decade or something. This is a daily threat. Can you
Yeah,
put some highlights on that? From your view, from what you see, from the text that you see?
yeah. I mean, really, like you said, there's not really a discrimination on who's attacked and who is doing the attacking. It's just whoever is vulnerable. Uh, all these different entities, and there's different categories, as I'm sure you and everyone watching this is aware of attackers who have different purposes to do the attacking for, whether it's political or it's nation state or it's financial related. They just attack whoever they can find. And the small businesses who don't have those security measures in place or those vulnerabilities patched are vulnerable, and they're vulnerable by default because oftentimes they can't afford it or they don't think they're a threat. uh, Not to take a spotlight off myself, but Kyle Hansloven from Huntress shared something on LinkedIn recently, and it was a photograph from a Telegram channel, and it was just people, bad actors selling information, and it was a small, I forget the size, but it was a small dental office, I think, of like 12 computers valued at over $1 million or over $1 billion, I think. They're a threat, or they're at risk, right? Rather, and they might not have thought they were at risk, and then they obviously got breached and their data got stolen, and they realized. And I think oftentimes it takes that for these small businesses to realize, hey, we're in danger. right? We're at risk of losing everything and then some, right? Because I can guarantee that company or most of these companies can't afford to pay a ransom or afford to um, recover this data that they lose. They're barely making it. They can't afford cybersecurity defenses or insurance. They can't afford to pay ransoms. So these companies realize these bad actors rather realize that, or companies even, they realize that these people are targets and they just target them again without discrimination. They don't care who
Right,
they are. They don't care what
right,
they do. They just want the money. They
right,
want the data.
right. And
I
and
do want to backtrack real quick. I had no idea what an MSP was when I decided like, hey, cybersecurity is my thing. I had no idea. Um, and maybe we'll get there about how I got to where I am. But uh, a really great friend of mine, Felix, he's one of the owners at Elevated Networks, and he reached out to me when I was going to school. And he said, "Hey, you're going to school for cybersecurity, right?" Yeah. I actually had no plan on working after my degree. I just wanted to have the degree and maybe work later on because being retired, I don't actually have to work. It's a very nice perk, but I love working still. I'm still young, so why not? Um, but he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, uh, we don't have anyone doing cybersecurity. We need it. Do you want to come interview?" I said, "Yeah." Um, I'd love to, right? Because why not do what you love with people you love, right? That's something else that the big corporation can't offer. As a small team at an MSP, you really get to build that. So,
right.
I talked to the owners and everything at Elevated and learned what MSPs were. And again, in my head, it clicked like, hey, this is what I want. This is that protection element that you're offering to people who really need it. What else is there, right? So everything really fell into place, and very fortunate for it because I was just, I wouldn't say zombieing through life. But I was enjoying retirement. It was nice. But again, now I'm doing what I love with people I love, for a great cause, right?
So it
And the
all
people that need
comes.
it.
eh, what I hear from you through this entire conversation is a need for a purpose, for a reason, for something which is beyond more of a desk job, of just having a role in a company or a day job. You're looking for something much more deeper, and you found
Yeah.
by being transforming yourself from killing the bad guys. That's your word. Killing the or fighting. Let's not
Let's
use
say fighting. Yeah.
let's say fighting. Fighting the bad guys in the military and protecting your country, as you said, and transforming to fighting the bad guys and helping small companies that do not have the ability to do so by themselves. And you're doing this as part of your role in an MSP. And again, it emphasizes the critical part that MSPs have in protecting the majority of businesses all around, which are the small and medium businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Let's talk. I'm being sensitive to time, but let's talk a little bit about the daily challenges of what really it means when you're an MSP and you have customers. You don't have one customers, you have many customers,
Right.
and you are basically responsible for their security, and you are managing their security. And as you previously said, there are many threats out there and many bad people that are targeting these businesses. What do you consider the main challenges for you as an MSP when being responsible for so much? How do you do this even practically? I mean, let's say you are protecting 15 companies, 20 companies, and you need to manage all the information that is coming from those 20 companies. Uh, I see like in my vision somebody sitting near a screen and information coming through and you can drown under all these the amount of and volumes of information. How do you manage this? Can you tell me a little bit about that challenge?
Yeah. So it's very challenging, actually. You have, like you said, 20 plus clients who are in different industries. They have different standards, different compliance standards, and they all have different goals. They have different softwares they use. They have different um, structures they want. So you have to, and this is less on me, this part, but you have to build their structures the way they want and that we think is efficient. So their infrastructure, their networks, and all those things. But when it comes to my issues that I see and challenges is you have to make sure that everything that they do is still protected, and everyone's different. You could have five um, construction companies as clients, and they could all have different things that they want, different goals that they want to achieve. But you have to align your security goals to their goals the same way as the other ones so that they're all protected equally. And you don't want to give one person less protection because for whatever reason, you don't want to give them less attention for whatever reason because that's where they could get hit. That's where they become vulnerable. Whether we're protecting them, whether they have all the protections enabled and they're covered, but if you stop looking at the alerts or you stop looking at anything for a day, that's where something slips through and you miss it. So you're right. It's just someone behind a screen with a bunch of data in front of them, and you're constantly looking at it, trying to make sense of it all. And it is challenging. There's not I can't think of another word to explain it. It's challenging, but there are great tools to help with that. Guards being one of them. It has a lot of things in a neat dashboard, so you can kind of scroll through each client and get a quick glance of it all. Um, there's
I'm sharing
yeah.
here the main screen of the dashboard of guards. If you want to share a little bit, again, we do not go into like a full stack demo, but if you want, to pinpoint something, we can see the coverage and issues and security controls that guards have in terms of external footprint, the cloud, phishing simulation, security awareness. Security awareness is something which is very, very crucial these days in companies. Of course, cloud data, information in the dark web. We know that many hackers that steal and leak information from companies. You can later on find it. I mean, users' credentials, passwords in the dark web. So we have a mechanism to monitor that also. Of course, email protection, which is very, very important, endpoint security and security and secure browsing. So yeah, please go on.
I think from my point of view, the most important thing we can get out of guards, everything's great, everything's important, but the most valuable tool we get is the security training because everything else, the device endpoint device management and the email protection, the cloud data is all phenomenal and very helpful in monitoring what's happening and protecting assets. But when it comes down to it, the point of failure is almost always going to be the end user. And maybe point of failure is the wrong word to use, but it's going to be that person clicking that email or clicking that link or downloading that fake installer, a fake updater, or putting their information into that fake Microsoft login page. So if they have the training and they have the fundamental knowledge to know how to differentiate what a real Microsoft or Google Workspace login page looks like, or what a real URL looks like, or why they should allow these updates to happen, and why they should trust or download from trusted sources instead of uh, wherever they get these installers from, right? Like having that fundamental and foundational training is the most valuable thing that any end user could get. So I think for us, that's the most valuable thing we can get
So
to give them.
you find yourself often have employees cyber training and everything around that, cyber awareness training.
Yeah, and even this goes back to my background in the military. Training was always number one. You can't go on to the harder things until you master the fundamentals. So understanding, and this applies to working on a computer, in my opinion, right? You shouldn't really be able to work on a computer until you understand the risks and you know how to navigate through those risks. Because there's always going to be risks. We're never going to remove all the risks, but through training, we can mitigate those risks, and through the rest of the tools, we mitigate those risks. But again, I think the training is the most important feature because again, it goes back to giving, empowering almost that end user to make conscious decisions, whether or not they should open that email, or if they could differentiate whether or not an email is good or bad just based on the preview they get. Because as we all know, if you open an email, it could have, a tracking pixel that the bad actor says, hey, this person opened it. They didn't click on it, but they opened it. So let's try again in like 2 months or 3 months. Let's try and get them again because they almost fell for it. But if they see the preview and they're like, hey, this isn't from Chris, this is from some Gmail address, I'm not even going to open it. So I think having that foundational training is the most important thing.
And it's very interesting that you say that. Along there was a year, I think 2 or 3 years ago, that ransomware was the biggest security problem, I would say, or the most common security problem around the world in organizations all around the world. It was like a plague, or like a, I don't know, like a disease that was spreading, a pandemic, actually, the
Yeah, yeah,
cyber pandemic. Um, but it is very important to understand that ransomware in any organization often does not start with ransomware. It will
right.
start with a smaller attack in the form of phishing that will install something on your computer or within the network. So
Yep.
when organizations need to learn about how to protect themselves from ransomware, a solution that stops ransomware sometimes will not be sufficient, because sometimes the answer is really where you just pointed out, in awareness of employees and users on what to click on, where to click on, what not to click on, especially which emails to open, which emails to discard. And again, the human factor here is crucial for protection. And I think that you pointed out very well that you're using this a lot. You're using this with guards, but I'm sure that you're using it as a general, I would say, guideline to increase the awareness to your customers. And I think that this is an essential part.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. And it's interesting going back to what you're saying about ransomware being the was very popular, we'll say.
That's one way of
If
putting it.
right. Um, if you look back at like the FBI, every year they'll publish the I forget the acronym, but it's the cybercrime data for the year previous. And in there, it's almost always going to be phishing at the highest because almost everything is
Oh,
disseminated down through phishing. So whether you have a million, let's just say a million phishing attacks, and then you have 500,000 um, ransomware attacks, those are almost directly correlated because half of the phishing attacks led to ransomware attacks. And again, the end users don't always understand that, yeah, I got phished. That's okay. No, it's not okay because in the half hour that your account was compromised, you sent out 1,000 emails or you sent out whatever the limit was of emails to the rest of your employees and other clients of yours with malicious links, not just phishing links, but they're now, whatever the file was, maliciously, rootkits or malware, Trojan, whatever it was, you sent that out. So now, because you clicked the link, we have to go do kind of like BattleField recovery, if you will. And all of that could be avoided by just understanding what an email is supposed to look like and what a bad email does look like. And that's why training is so important.
amazing. Um, again, being sensitive to time, maybe we can conclude in you telling, like, finish up with a sentence about about our partnership, the partnership you have with guards and our guards. Again, in a sentence, not to go too much, but
Oh,
how guards help you as an MSP to protect your clients.
it's been empowering to protect our clients, having so much, uh, so many tools available to cover as much as we can with, again, just one platform. Try to keep it in a sentence, but
No, it's okay. It's okay.
yeah,
So you mean the platform, the unified platform? That's the key element that you saw. You discussed also the cyber security awareness, which helped us. So I think that if I'm wrapping this up and concluding everything we spoke about, it was fascinating to, go through. If I'm doing like key takeaways that I took, we heard about the different roles that you did in the army, and how you drafted yourself or enlisted to the army in order to fight bad guys, and then at some point you had to do some kind of a change because life is sometimes, as Lennon said, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
yeah,
And the change came and you had to choose something else, and you found your own personal angle in still fighting the bad guys, and protecting those who cannot be protecting themselves. I really, really liked what you said back there, and finding your way in an MSP to protect small and medium size businesses by helping them against the ever evolving cyber threat. And I liked even the example that you said in of a dental office that also needs protection, even if it's a small dental office with only a few employees, but still need protection, and you guys are helping that. And of course, the challenges you described as an MSP of having a lot of information and a lot of liability when in charge of protecting different customers and different businesses, and the need for, as you said, in the end, for a unified platform in order to receive everything in one place and being able to manage all this information that is coming and helping you, if I can close it this sentence, fight the bad guys.
yeah, yeah,
I think,
100%.
yeah. Chris, I want to thank you very, very much for this conversation. It's been fascinating to hear it from you and listening to you and listening to your journey from the beginning until today. Thank you
Thank
very much
you.
for helping us and uncover this story. Again, I found it very, very unique and very, very interesting. So again, thank you for that. I want to close with I would like to look for one last yeah, one last picture from that you shared with me. If you can share, what are we looking at here?
So this was me and one of my really great friends from aviation, the aviation world when we graduated recruiting school. I met Sergeant Irwin there when I was at the Advanced Leaders course, which is a school you go to for leadership in the Army,
Cool.
and we ended up going to recruiting school together. So that was us graduating and moving on to become recruiters.
Very impressive. The uniform and very, very impressive.
Thank you again,
Chris,
Tal. Thank you for having me. This
thank
has been
you
great.
for having this conversation. It's been a great experience. And thank you for our listeners. We'll be seeing you on the next episode of these webinars that are dedicated to the community of MSPs. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.